From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana, Siddiqui. First, the headlines. Muslim Americans gave $1.8 billion in charity last year. High food prices to force 10 million into poverty in Africa. 20 Muslim-owned shops demolished in India despite court order. Judge approves Julian Assange extradition to U.S. Over 500 Rohingya flee Malaysian detention center, 6 killed. Geoengineering could raise risk of malaria for 1 billion. And a special interview of Austrian professor Farid Hafez, a victim of Islamophobia. Our top story tonight. Muslim Americans gave $1.8 billion in charity last year to meet their religious obligation to help the poor, according to a new report. The Muslim Philanthropy Initiative at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy conducted the research. The study counted only giving related to zakat. Muslims are expected to give at least 2.5% of their wealth annually, with some exceptions. The largest portion of zakat, over 25%, went to international nonprofits, according to the study. Zakat can also be directed to governments, which came in at second at 21.7%, followed by domestic nonprofits at 18.3%. Muslims also engage in other forms of charity known as sadaqah, which can go to causes other than helping the poor. A memo by a top aide to U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders says the 80-year-old could run again in 2024 if President Joe Biden doesn't. The independent senator from Vermont has not ruled out a third run for the White House, according to the campaign memo viewed by the Washington Post. Faiz Shakir, Sanders' 2020 campaign manager, wrote the memo to political allies. The Post reports the memo was shared by a person with direct knowledge of its contents on condition of anonymity because it was not released publicly. Its authenticity was confirmed by a second person with direct knowledge of the contents, the Post reports. After a 2-year pandemic hiatus, the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago hosted its 23rd annual Interfaith Iftar earlier this month. Among the guests was Cardinal Blaise Supich, Bishop of the Archdiocese of Chicago. This year's Iftar, a fast-breaking meal observed nightly during the month of Ramadan, was held at Islamic Foundation North in the suburb of Libertyville. Supich said for more than 2 decades, the Iftar has been a wonderful opportunity for Catholics to join in friendship with our Muslim partners. He added that collectively we can do more to bring about change for the good than any one of us can do alone. I encourage local parishes, mosques, and prayer centers to reach out to one another in a gesture of welcome, friendship, kindness, and collaboration. The annual meal has been a time-honored tradition between CIOGC and the Archdiocese since 1999. CIOGC serves more than 400,000 members in the Greater Chicago area. The council recently celebrated its 30th anniversary. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said high food prices could force an estimated 10 million more people into poverty in sub-Saharan Africa. She said Russia's destruction of the Ukrainian economy and its infrastructure is a key factor affecting global commodity prices. The war has further exacerbated pre-existing price and food supply pressures, she added. Yellen noted before the war, more than 800 million people, 10% of the global population, were facing food insecurity. She stressed poor nutrition and food insecurity have had serious implications on economic well-being and social and political stability. Yellen blamed Russia's war in Ukraine for making an already dire situation worse. 20 Muslim-owned shops in the Indian capital, New Delhi, were demolished this week by a local municipality administered by India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. This was despite an Indian Supreme Court order halting the demolitions. The shops were owned by poor Muslim waste collectors and were located in the same area where a mosque was attacked just days before. On April 16th, the militant Hindu Bajrang Dal army, equipped with guns and swords, attacked the house of worship. Muslims resisted the attack on their mosque. 3 days later, their shops were demolished. Jamiat Ulema-e-Hind, the country's largest socio-religious Muslim organization, appealed to the Supreme Court earlier this week. Here's a report by Saleha Farouk on the ongoing demolition of Muslim properties.
India is crushing Muslims, literally bulldozing their homes and shops, without a case and without trial, simply bulldozing because they can. Attacks on mosques and churches happen often in Gandhi's India today. However, demolishing houses and shops is a new method to the madness called Hindutva, or India for Hindus only ideology. It all started this Ramadan. It happened first in Madhya Pradesh. RSS BJP rules this Indian state, they bulldozed 16 houses and 29 shops. What was their crime? These Muslims resisted attacks on their mosques by the Hindu militia a day earlier on April 10th, 2022. The very next day, on April 11th, the victims' houses and shops were gone. RSS militia attacks. The BJP and police then punish the victims. That is the method in the madness. Was there any case or any judicial process? None. The RSS BJP chief minister simply tweeted about it. He was the chief prosecutor, chief judge, and chief demolisher. He was swift. Within 24 hours, the livelihood of these Muslims was gone. As the crowd shouted, Jai Shri Ram. The media loved it. They cheered the demolition. Reporters Without Borders rates Indian media below Afghanistan and Burma. Intoxicated by the new method to the madness, they did it again. This time, the Hindutva fascists chose the Indian capital, Delhi. The police here are normally controlled by the federal government of Modi. On April 16, 2022, militia attacked a mosque in Jahangirpuri neighborhood of Delhi. The Bajrang Dal mobs showed up armed with swords, tridents, and guns. Muslim worshippers resisted the attacks on their mosque. Within 3 days, on Tuesday, April 19th, a demolition drive targeting Muslims was launched on the demands of the BJP's Delhi president, Adesh Gupta. Muslims were served a midnight notice. They approached the Supreme Court. It ordered to stop the demolitions. But BJP-ruled India hardly cares for the courts. Poor people who live there collecting and selling scraps lost all their belongings. Their 20 shops were bulldozed into dust this holy month of Ramadan. This is just a small window into Ramadan in India. Every day of Ramadan saw new attacks on Muslims, burning their properties, demolishing their homes, and arresting the victims. It all starts with armed mobs calling for attacks on Muslims and their mosques. And when Muslims resist, they end up losing their houses and shops. Should Indian Muslims stop resisting? Should they let their mosques, their homes, and their lives be attacked? Can they trust Indian police, the RSS militia, and the BJP government to protect them? This is Saleha Farouk reporting for Muslim Network TV from its Toronto studios.
On Wednesday, a number of far-right Israeli groups gathered in West Jerusalem for a planned flag march. The Israeli rally, known as Jerusalem Day, marks the anniversary of the Israeli occupation of East Jerusalem in 1967. Among those gathered was far-right lawmaker Itamar Ben-Gvir, despite a ban on his attending the march. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett on Wednesday ordered a ban on Ben-Gvir accessing Jerusalem's Bab al-Amud area to join the march. Bennett said he would not allow Ben-Gvir's political provocation to endanger the lives of Israeli soldiers and police. Several Palestinian groups warned against organizing the flag march in occupied East Jerusalem. Last year's march prompted the worst wave of violence in Gaza in years between Palestinian group Hamas and Israel. A British judge on Wednesday approved the U.S. government's request to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Assange faces espionage charges for publishing classified material that exposed war crimes by American forces. The judge's new order is the culmination of a drawn-out legal battle. It places the final decision on Assange's extradition in the hands of UK Home Secretary Priti Patel. The WikiLeaks publisher has few options to fight his removal to the US, where he faces a 175-year prison sentence. Patel is expected to make a final decision by May 18th. He remains jailed in a high-security London prison. News stories regarding Rohingya refugees and more after this short break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Walking up and down the world's largest refugee camps, I met Sister Fatima. Well, I'm calling her a sister. She was just a teenage girl, my granddaughter's age. Her parents were slaughtered by the Burmese military, and she was dragged by the Burmese soldiers to their hut, and all night long she was violated. She lost consciousness. When she regained, and in the morning and soldiers were themselves away, she ran and hid in a vegetable patch. Some people saw her, gave her clothes, and took her 4-day-long walk to Bangladesh. Who will speak up for her? Who will stand up for her if not you and I? It's our responsibility. It's our duty, brothers and sisters in humanity. And that's why I like you to support Burma Task Force. I'm a volunteer for it. But Burma Task Force is standing up to stop this genocide, violation of our sisters. You and I are free, they are not. Please stand up, work with Burma Task Force, and donate today to Burma Task Force. Together, we can do it. Assalamu alaikum.
Billboards are popping up all over the country with an...
Our neighbors don't realize that Muslims are absolutely opposed to ISIS. Salam. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I'm an imam in Chicago.
16 shots! No me!
No justice!
No me!
So how do we bring up the energy which can really have an impact on the world? You need to build bridges of understanding among people, and we need to have America moving forward. That lesson learned has brought the strength of humanity to America, which is the diversity.
Mujahid Talks, only on Muslim Network TV. Faithfully connected.
Assalamu alaikum! Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
At least 6 Rohingya refugees were killed after more than 500 escaped from a detention center in Malaysia early Wednesday. State news agency Bernama reported the detainees fled the Sungai Bakap Immigration Detention Depot in Nibong Tibal, a town in the northwestern Penang province. The depot housed 664 Rohingya detainees, and 528 of them escaped. 2 men, 2 women, a boy and a girl were killed while trying to cross a busy highway, said Provincial Police Chief Muhammad Shuhaili Muhammad Zain. Zain said police managed to recapture 229 detainees who fled along the highway. 88 others were caught earlier by villagers and immigration personnel. According to the United Nations, the Rohingya are the most persecuted minority in the world. Rashad Hussain, the U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, emphasized the need for Rohingya to develop their own schools and businesses. Hussain arrived in Bangladesh on Sunday for a 4-day visit. He held a series of meetings with Bangladeshi government officials and visited Rohingya refugee camps. Bangladesh is home to over 1 million Rohingya refugees who face genocide in Burma. On Tuesday, Russian rockets hit close to a mosque in Mariupol, Ukraine. The partially damaged mosque was built in memory of Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent and his wife Hürrem Sultan. The Ukrainian government tweeted that thousands of civilians, including women, children, and elderly, remain in Mariupol under Russian bombardment. Many Mariupol residents are hiding in bomb shelters along with Ukrainian forces, their wounded and the dead. People are short of food, water, and medicine and need immediate safe evacuation, the government said. On Wednesday, U.S. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar met with ousted Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan in Islamabad on her maiden visit to the country. Omar, one of the few Muslim members of U.S. Congress, met with Khan at his home in Islamabad's Bani Gala district. They discussed Islamophobia and other related issues. A tweet shared by a member of Khan's political party quoted Omar expressing her admiration for Khan and his work against Islamophobia globally. The tweet said Khan also appreciated Omar's courageous and principled position on issues. Their meeting comes just weeks after Khan was removed from office through the opposition party's no-confidence vote. Khan has alleged this was a result of a foreign conspiracy. A new study concludes geoengineering the climate would result in enormous repercussions for the health of billions of people at risk of malaria in tropical countries. The study was published in Nature Communications by Colin Carlson and Christopher Rissos. Their research focused on solar radiation management, a quick fix to reduce the impacts of climate change. One of the methods proposed is injecting aerosols into the stratosphere that reflect incoming sunlight, leading to pausing global warming temporarily. The technique's impacts on health have not been studied. Carlson is an assistant research professor at the Center for Global Health Science and Security at Georgetown University Medical Center. Rissos is a senior researcher at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. Brothers and sisters, we all watch the Allahu Akbar lady from India. She's amazing, isn't she? She's neither compromising her hijab nor her education. She's standing tall. We must stand with her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect her. But it is not just hijab, brothers and sisters. Indian Muslims are facing genocide.
Genocide that we face in India is not a new phenomenon. India has had several genocides.
They are attacked every day. Even the Indian government admits there has been more than 1,800 organized attacks on Muslims, but they call it riot. 660 people are hanged to death in India, lynched in broad daylight, sometimes just because they were accused of eating beef. Yes, accusation of eating beef can kill a human being in India. We cannot remain silent, can we? Alhamdulillah, OIC has spoken, that is good, but why in the world United Nations is silent? The UN has a responsibility to protect. It has a duty to prevent genocide. Sisters and brothers, we must stand with Indian Muslims and other minorities. We are free, they are not. We are not attacked, they are under attack day and night. Let's do our job. I have signed this UN petition. I ask you to sign it now. Thank you so much.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back. To discuss the Islamophobic targeting of Professor Farid Hafez, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Samana. Islamophobia in Europe continue to rise. Interesting things come out of it, including the largest police invasion against a scholar. We have that scholar with us, Farid Hafez. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you for having me again on your show.
Welcome to Muslim Network TV. Professor Farid Hafez is a political scientist from the Georgetown University's Bridges Initiative and a visiting professor of international studies. Please share with us, what was that largest police raid in Europe which you were subject of?
Well, what happened was in November 2020 that a police raid happened in Austria targeting 70 people and institutions. And one of them was me. And that happened actually exactly 1 week after the first militant attack on alleged ISIS sympathizers happened in the downtown city of Vienna. So a lot of commentators and observers argued that the main intention was to distract from the poor from the poor work of the investigation and Secret Service, because they were not able to first of all counteract and preempt the militant attack that happened on the 2nd of November in 2020. But at the very same time, what also has to be said is that this investigation had been ongoing secretly for more than a year prior to November 9th in 2020. And the reason why this investigation started, there are different theories about that. The official narrative is that it happened because of some people were gathering sometimes many years before and had an affiliation to the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, obviously, the Muslim Brotherhood is not considered a terrorist organization, but that was the way that the Secret Service framed them. So there were some MPs who were arguing that the real reason behind this whole raid was that there was a secret cooperation between the Austrian Secret Service and the Egyptian Secret Service and other secret services. That is another narrative that exists. When it comes to my person, I was actually, and this is what we could find in the files later on, I was actually included in this whole investigation at a very late point in time, which is only a couple of months prior to when the raid happened. So I was not the one who was investigated from the very beginning on. And if you ask me, I would argue that it is very obvious and clear the reason why that happened was because I was a harsh critic of the Austrian government, especially in terms of its Islam policies. So I, as the editor of the European Islamophobia report, somebody who has continuously spoken out and spoken truth to power in the Austrian context of its discriminatory policies towards Muslims, I became a target. And this is actually one of the things that I could now see with the most recent decision that was taken by the regional court. I mean, one has to say that the repercussions were very harsh. So the bank accounts of the people have been frozen, my own, including my own. The personal assets have been frozen. So it had very severe implications, that the fact that this raid happened. And the other thing is that meanwhile, also the higher court of the city of Graz ruled that this raid has been unlawful. So this is one side of the story, but at the very same time, the investigation is still ongoing with most of the people, and actually the number of suspects has been widened, and that there is currently more than 100 people. Although the cases against a few persons have also been closed.
So tell us, when they arrived raiding your home, could you describe how was their attitude and level of aggression?
Well, I think, if we speak about the persons that were there, it was a very mixed picture. There were people with very different attitudes. But I personally, I don't take this very personal, but rather for me, this is a structural thing. There was an order and they did their job. They were brutal in the way that they destroyed the main entrance. They destroyed the window. They left also a full bullet. And there were several aspects. The fact that they came at 5 o'clock in the morning, simultaneously raiding the houses of 70 people and institutions, waking up my kids and the kids of other people with their guns in their hands, special forces, which hugely traumatized not only my own children, but a lot of children who were affected by that raid. That's one part of the story. But I think at the end of the day, what this is, it is an outcome of a very hostile Islamophobic environment that has been nurtured within the last decade. And that came not only or primarily from the far right, but from a government that was centrist, right? Currently, or at that time, the coalition government that was in power was a coalition between the centrist right Christian Democratic Party and the Green Party. But it was primarily the conservatives who were behind that.
That's amazing. So the power was not in the hands of conservative, but they were behind it and they were able to achieve all of that. So it looks like at the broader level of the society, there is a collaborative effort. So how Muslims are fighting back legally? Do they have a thorough legal representation? And how they're pushing back as a citizen politically?
Well, I think the picture is a mixed one. On the one hand, I think one immediate effect of this raid was a huge intimidation of large parts of the Muslim civil society. A lot of them were basically silent. They were frightened, especially because, the whole context of a militant attack, injuring 20 people, killing more than a handful of people, that left its imprint on Austrian society. So that was also an ideal environment to start such a raid, and the government could be very sure that there was nearly no pushback. And this is what happened. So the outcry was very limited to non-existent. At the very same time, the people that have been affected by that raid, some of them, I mean, also because their bank accounts were frozen, they did not have any money left, right? So how can you get a lawyer if you can't pay the lawyer? So it was a difficult situation for many people. Many are fighting back. At the very same time, I did a crowdfunding, which is still ongoing on GoFundMe, where hundreds of people were just supporting me, donating money in order to help me fight this legal case. But again, the state prosecutor has up to 3 years' time to either file a charge or close the case. These 3 years, I suppose, and I fear, will have to pass until all of this horrible story will end. But still, there is a larger question mark here, which is like the very toxic environment that has been nurtured within the last few years. That is still something that exists. And there was pushback by some anti-racist NGOs, but I think, if you would say in Russia, an academic gets a crackdown by the government, there would be a huge outcry. In the West, there would be a huge outcry from larger parts of the civil society. This is not what I have been witnessing. And I think that shows us very much how hegemonic Islamophobia has become, how mainstream it has become, and how much Muslims have become victims and potential victims that cannot count on a huge solidarity among larger parts of the society and larger segments of the society.
Well, thank you so much, Professor, for your time. Just one more question, a brief answer. Would appreciate your time. Tell us, is the attack, I mean, you're the author of Islamophobia report on Europe. Is this common for European governments to attack people who are standing up and defining what is going on in the society in terms of Islamophobia?
Well, I mean, obviously the Austrian... the most recent Austrian way how to handle those things is, and this was also a part of the last decision that was taken by the regional court, claiming that whoever speaks about Islamophobia is basically trying to create a caliphate, a worldwide caliphate. I mean, this is absurd. It's ridiculous. But it is also a way of criminalizing critical studies. So there is a general tendency that you can see in countries like Hungary, in countries like France, where critical race studies or gender studies, sexuality studies, or Islamophobia studies are being targeted. So that is one thing. And in terms of the fight or the crackdown on critical Islamophobia studies institutions or scholars, that is something that we can see in countries like France and Austria. And thanks God that has not become more mainstream, but I think the recent shutdown of monitoring centers in France that were looking at Islamophobia, like the Collective Against Islamophobia in France, that is a recent example of another country where you could see that the government is going against people who are critical of Islamophobia.
Well, thank you so much, Professor, for your time. Truly appreciate, and good luck with the cases. I'm glad you are in America where you can speak relatively freely and continue to fight your case in Austria. Thank you so much.
You.
Back to you, Samana.
Thank you, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.